Hello!
Hello and welcome to Biggest I Ever Had with Dan and Dave, a show where we pick a random year in chart history and talk about the number one singles.
Yeah, so this is episode 2 of series 2. Go ahead back and listen to the first episode if you kind of want a bit of context of what exactly it is we're doing. We went into a bit more detail in that episode, but I'll kind of just quickly breeze through. Basically, we use a random number generator to pick us a year, and we kind of go through every number one single in the UK, pick what we kind of feel is not objectively the best, but probably our favourite. Yeah. Which one would we kind of delete from history if we could, and which one do we feel is maybe sort of an underrated gem?
Yeah.
You know, or maybe doesn't get as much of a credit as it deserves, should I say. I mean, it's a number one single, so these aren't exactly obscure songs nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, they made people a lot of money.
Yeah, although there was a distressing amount this week that I'd never heard of, and when I listen to them I will probably never hear of them.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, like, if you say, 1970s music to me, I would go, oh yeah, I know quite a lot of 1970s music, but like over half of these songs, or maybe half of these songs I hadn't actually heard before. Yeah,
so in case you didn't read it from the title, this week we are picking 1970. Last week's episode, at the end of the episode, we did the number generator and it picked us 1970, so that's why we're talking about it this week. There was one thing that really stood out to me to begin with, which is how few number one singles there are.
Yeah.
I think there's only like 14, which, considering there's 52 weeks in a year, like, when stuff is number one, it's number one for like multiple weeks, which compared to last episode when we did 2006, we had like 50 songs or something to pick from. You know, it becomes, back in the 1970s at least, looking at the charts, something is number one and it's number one for like a long time.
Yeah, people just can't get enough of it.
Yeah, as for like now, it seems to be there's a new number one every single week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the first thing. To steal a joke from The Simpsons, I feel like the 1970s started on January the 1st, 1970.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but this to me is the start of the 70s, 1970.
It very much is. Although it's still quite, transitional, because they haven't got into like the more harder, rockier stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of like decade music is kind of nonsense. You know, like there isn't a song that is quintessentially the 80s, or trends and things like that do not happen, as uniformly as like CD collections will tell you that they do. But this is definitely, when you compare 1970 to like 1979, the difference is so
a lot
stark.
Has changed.
We haven't had at this point. We've still got disco coming up. The big sort of R&B revival of sort of Soul Train, that kind of thing. The hard rock of sort of Led Zeppelin and Queen, then the even harder bands like Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
We have a lot of musical trends that are going to happen in the next couple of years, and these 14 singles do not hint towards any of that.
If you were asked to predict what comes next, like, it's a complete shock when you actually look at it in reality.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that immediately stood out to me was there's a lot of like singer-songwriter type music.
Yeah.
Kind of twee, that sort of like San Francisco, slightly smug, Joni Mitchell type music. Yeah. Not that I'm putting down that kind of sort of music, but I'm just saying that to me is the majority of this list. I mean, there's a few other, there is some good songs. But yeah, it's a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, there's a couple of novelties in there as well.
Yeah, novelty tracks are hanging about. We lose Jimi Hendrix this year, and so he finally gets a number one single. I mean, politically, the 1970s, quite a lot of turmoil. The Vietnam War's going on.
Yeah.
There's, civil unrest, as there kind of is any time of the year. But, there is that going on. And the charts don't really reflect that.
No.
I think we've said before that the charts are never really a very good snapshot of what's actually going on in the world. What people are actually buying and listening to is usually not what is remembered.
Yeah.
And when people look back on things, when people look back on the this sort of period, I think there's a lot of protest music and a lot of Neil Young and that kind of thing that people are playing, and that's not actually what the general public are listening to.
And a lot of these are one-hit wonders.
Yeah, there's a surprising amount of one-hit wonders.
Which just shows that there's a very big disconnect between what we actually remember and what actually was popular at the time.
Yeah. I think as well, albums are still very, very big at this point. Yeah. So there's a lot of artists that, they're selling millions of albums, but they're not having hit singles because that's not how it worked. The Rolling Stones aren't here. but they're selling loads of albums
Yeah.
and they're touring the world. You know, to say that the Rolling Stones are over in 1970 would be stupid. Yet they're not there.
Yeah.
You know, there's no chart success for the
Yeah.
Rolling Stones.
Elvis features quite prominently.
Yeah, and this is kind of the weird transitional bit. This to me isn't like Elvis isn't over yet in 1970.
Yeah.
But it's the beginning of the end. You know, he's kind of, you know, he had his kind of resurgence at the end of the 60s. He did like his, you know,
Yeah.
Hawaii special, I think. It was in Hawaii where he wore a full leather suit.
Oh, that was the comeback special.
Yeah, that was the comeback special. So that's happened, and it's kind of all downhill from there.
Yeah.
You know,
that is the end of peak Elvis.
yeah, the next couple of years, he's going to get very, very fat. He's going to get very addicted to drugs, and he's
Yeah.
going to die. Spoiler alert. But he, like you said, he's still having hits.
Yeah.
You know, he's still got name recognition. It's particularly as none of the Elvis singles that I personally like. When you look through the charts,
Yeah.
I've personally not heard of most of them. I'm sure there'd be some Elvis fanatic who would go, actually, you know, they're the best songs he ever recorded, as
Yeah.
it seems to be the case, where anything you say, you criticise. But Elvis is definitely phoning it in at this point as well, and that's going to become a much more regular occurrence for him. He, like we said though, the name still has some brand recognition.
Yeah. Although the hit itself, The One Review, isn't one that I was familiar with.
No, I listened to it and it sounded like an Elvis song.
Yeah, just not a great Elvis
Yeah,
song.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want to in any way disparage Elvis. I mean, he's Elvis, for God's sake. But he didn't exactly evolve as an artist.
No.
You know, you listen to a greatest hits of Elvis and they sound like Elvis songs. If you're into that, fine, I'm not criticising. But he's not exactly an artist that changed up his style.
No,
you know?
not remarkably.
He did ballads and he did rock and roll songs and that's kind of it. You know,
The production changed, but
Production
he
changed,
was
but-
Elvis.
yeah, he's Elvis. What do you want?
Yeah.
You know, it's fine. I'm not, you know, if it wasn't for Elvis, we wouldn't have got much better music that came afterwards. But
1970 was also the year that the Jacksons broke through to the UK
yeah,
charts.
and again, a sign of what's to come.
Yeah.
When they're sort of going to dominate the sort of mid to late
Yeah.
70s. The other thing as well, which is surprising, and I was really surprised by this, there's no Beatles.
No.
I mean, the Beatles have broken up at this point. In my mind, I was like, oh, Let It Be probably charted like the beginning of 1970, but apparently not. And I also expected to see a surprising, like, a Beatle on there, whether, you know, that's George's solo records or Paul's solo records or even Ringo or John.
Yeah.
But there's no Beatle at all. That is
No.
going to change, obviously. Like the rest of the 70s, I think pretty much every year one of them gets a hit single at some point. Yeah, 1970, no. Transitional year, really. I think that's kind of what I take away from it.
Yeah.
With this one, because unlike the 2006 episode where I pretty much knew every single song there was less songs to listen to,
Yeah.
but there was a lot less songs that I knew. So I was like, oh, okay, hopefully I'll find some sort of hidden gem. I didn't.
No. I found that the ones that I'd already heard are the ones that I actually liked the most.
And if your average sort of person was to just look at this list, the ones that they can pick out that they know, those are the ones that have had staying power. Well, should we go on to the next part?
Let's get on with it.
I always hesitate to say best. I think I've said this multiple times. This
Yeah.
is favourite. So we're going to go through our favourite song, hit number one single of 1970. I don't know if we've got the same one. We haven't. Sometimes we kind of talk about what we're going to say, but today I have no idea. So
No.
what did you pick? What stood out to you as your favourite? Because if it is the same as mine, I will pick a slightly different one.
Okay, so I picked 4 that I like and I enjoy. But of those 4, I think my favourite one is Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum.
Ah, no, that isn't what I picked then. No, I mean, I didn't mind that one. That kind of got an honourable mention.
Yeah.
But I prefer the Doctor and the Medics version from
really?
the 80s.
Yeah.
It's been number one 3 times, that song, I didn't realise.
Yeah.
Because this was obviously the original.
Yeah.
Doctor and the Medics, which they kind of just sort of glammed it up a bit. They didn't really do a huge amount. And then in 2003, it was number one for Gareth Gates and the
Nice.
Kumars. The Kumars, which were never that funny. But this is another one of those singles that's been number one 3 times for 3 different artists. A bit like Unchained Melody, which weirdly was also covered by Gareth Gates. So I guess Gareth Gates was very good at having number one singles.
Simon Cowell was very good at picking songs that were already popular.
So no, I think that's quite a good choice.
Yeah, I think the guitar sound on that is iconic. That really like searing, fuzzy, dirty guitar sound, and that really kind of set the scene for some of the more rocky, heavy acts, I think.
See, for me, I think it's kind of the worst hit single to have. Because that's it. Yeah, because that's it. You're never going to follow up on it. You might as well just break up now. You might as well just give up on releasing music. Because you're always going to be the spirit in the sky, man. Yeah. That's all you're going to be. That's all you're going to be. You know, when you write a song like that, that's so like it's like a perfect pop song. Yeah. You know, that's it. You're not going to have a career after that.
You're not. The thing I find really funny about it. So it's obviously a major theme in Spirit in the Sky is like religion. In particular, it's about Jesus. Yeah. The guy who wrote it was Jewish, so it wasn't his faith. He just saw like a gospel show on the television and how all of the audience were like really getting into these like chants about Jesus, and he was like, that's piss easy, I could do one of those. And he wrote it in 15 minutes. It's
one of the most popular funeral songs because people think they're funny and they're original. Yeah. To have spirit like, ha ha. And maybe the first person that did it was kind of funny, but it's one of those like, you're not funny, you're not original.
In fact, isn't it now something like the most picked funeral song, other than I think Danny Boy or
like the really obvious like sad ones.
It's it's either number one or number two most picked funeral song,
which doesn't surprise me. And again, you're not being funny or original. It's been done. I mean, if it genuinely was your favourite song, I'm not saying you're not like you're dead. Who cares? But you know, if you're doing it because you think it's funny, I can tell you right now, it's not funny. So. My granny went to a funeral. Speaking of funeral songs, of like an old man who was like in his like late 80s, early 90s. I think she cared for him, and he had Firework by Katy Perry. And everyone was like,
was he cremated?
I don't know if he was cremated, but it was just the idea of this like very old, and he wasn't like, you know, some really hip and happening like old 80-year-old who and apparently like everyone at the funeral, she was like, that's an odd choice, and everyone at the funeral was like, such a fitting tribute. Wow. And you're going, really? Like, brilliant. But no, I didn't pick that, but that would have got an honourable mention. It's not one that I disagree with. The one I was stuck between two. Yeah. It was.
I think I can, like,
what do you think?
I think you've picked either In the Summertime or Band of Gold.
No, I didn't pick either of those. Because we have an underrated part. So I was going to pick I Hate In the Summertime.
Really?
And I was going to talk about that in a minute. So,
oh my god. Okay, we'll get on to that.
I was going to pick either Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel or Tears of a Clown by Smokey Robinson. It was difficult which one because, I mean, they're not similar, but they're both similar themes, I guess. Yeah. And I kind of went. I eventually went for Bridge Over Troubled Water.
Oh right,
But I would have made a case for Smokey Robinson. They're two just fantastic songs.
Yeah, the Bridge Over Troubled Water is it's definitely one of the best things that Simon and Garfunkel ever did.
Yeah, I mean,
not the best.
Maybe Sound of Silence I prefer. But I mean, it's hard to pick. Yeah. Bridge Over Troubled Water. I think. I'm never quite sure. I think, is Bridge Over Troubled Water the album as well?
Yes, yeah.
And it's the album that has, like, every Simon & Garfunkel song you've ever heard of, like, on it. Yeah. You know, I might be wrong about that, but...
Yeah, the album was a massive
I've always
success.
known it as the album that it's, like, it's got everything. Yeah. You know? Yeah, you don't need to... You don't need to... Not that I dislike Simon & Garfunkel, but you maybe don't need to go that much further into their discography.
Parsley, Sage and Thyme is a good album.
Yeah. I'm not discrediting them. I'm just saying, you know, if you were a surface level Simon & Garfunkel fan, I think that would be okay. Yeah. But yeah, and the other one was Smokey Robinson. I love Tears of a Clown. This was the golden era of Motown for me. The late 60s, early 70s. Apart from Stevie Wonder and the Jacksons, but the Jacksons would leave Motown. Yeah. Motown quite quickly goes very bad, very quickly. To the point where they're kind of a joke in the 80s, which is amazing considering they had hit after hit after hit. And then it kind of just all goes. They just didn't have the momentum. Yeah. I don't know if maybe because so much money turned up that changes things. I don't really know. But yeah, but I mean, Motown are still very much like on top of their game in 1970. Have you seen the BBC documentary about the Motown tour of the UK? No. There's brilliant. So like all the big Motown artists you've ever heard of did like this tour of like really crappy clubs in the UK, and it was like massively underwhelming. Yeah. And it's one of these where you're like, really, like. Stevie Wonder and Smokey Robinson played like Great
Yeah.
Yarmouth.
Oh shit! This appears in the Rocket Man because he's in the backing band for on this Motown tour.
Yeah, and they literally played like really shitty clubs.
Yeah.
In like crap towns as well. Like, not to put down Great Yarmouth, that was just the first one that came to my head. If there's any listeners in Great Yarmouth, but it was kind of just one of those, and you're like, really? Like, Stevie Wonder and Smokey Robinson did like a duet on stage.
Wow.
Like, in this place.
Yeah, in Butlins.
And there's like a story of them like pulling a prank on them all, like these like white British like session musicians, and pretending to hold them all hostage, and because they were from like Detroit where this kind of stuff really happens, they genuinely, it wasn't a funny joke. No. You know? So, and they tell this story like, ha ha ha, they were really scared. It's like, yeah, because this shit was actually happening in Detroit at the time. You know, not really that funny. But yeah, no, those were kind of my favourite. As I said, I was kind of holding back Band of Gold as my underrated one, because I felt like if somebody was to just stare at this list, they would get to it straight away. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I like Spirit in the Sky. I don't like In the Summertime.
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
Shall we move on to the second part then? Because I feel like we both would like to delete one song from this list.
Yeah.
And we'll go into detail why. I don't think it even needs that much detail why I'd like to delete one song.
Once you learn what song we're talking about, you'll be like...
And the artist. Yeah, let's not just delete the song from existing, and not just delete the artist's musical career from existing. Let's delete the human being from history, so they just didn't exist.
Yeah.
But if that song wasn't on this list, I would have deleted Mungo Jerry in the Summertime, because I absolutely, it just seems so smug and just boring.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a cider advert. It sounds like Thatchers are trying to basically sell me music. I've never liked In the Summertime.
Yeah. Although it's like this must be the only charting song where one of the instruments is a jug.
Jug, yes, it's a jug.
See, I think it's quite fun.
Yeah, maybe if it wasn't as popular as it is.
Yeah.
Because I think it was the biggest selling single of 1970. Maybe there'd be a part of me that like would sort of like it.
Yeah.
But the years upon years of overplay and its use in movies and adverts, and you know, buskers do it a lot. Because it's a very simple song. Yeah. It's almost like a nursery rhyme.
The lyrics are so simplistic, aren't they? But actually, speaking of the lyrics, it sounds like a funny, just throwaway song, but the lyrics are so misogynistic.
Yeah,
it's literally like, if her daddy's rich, take her out for a meal, but if he's not rich,
if daddy's poor,
just have sex with her.
Have sex with her, because she's not even
in a lay-by.
Yeah.
That's literally what it's saying. Like, not many people realise that, I don't think.
I actually have seen Mungo Jerry live.
Really?
Yes. 2007, Isle of Wight. And you go, I didn't know you went to Isle of Wight Music Festival. No, I did see them at a festival. It wasn't the Isle of Wight Music Festival, the big popular music festival that Hendrix played in the 70s. Yeah. No, I saw them at the Isle of Wight Garlic Festival. They headlined the Isle of Wight Garlic Festival.
Yeah.
It was them and an artist who for some bizarre reason, I really, really, really wish I could find like some sort of internet trace. Yeah. Other than if you search this artist's name, it says that they were second on the bill at the 2007 Isle of Wight Garlic Festival. Was an artist who called themselves Little Noddy Holder.
Okay.
And it was like, he wasn't like, he didn't have dwarfism or anything. He was about 5'5", which is short for a man, but not like, you know, medically recognised, dressed like Noddy Holder, doing covers of Slade songs, and at one point he stopped his set halfway through to declare that he was not a tribute act. He was not an impersonator. He was Little Noddy Holder, as declared by Slade's manager in the 1970s.
Wow.
And I there's so many questions that I have as to what that memory of that incident is.
You spiked.
It's just so bizarre. It did happen because I was with my family and we were all as confused as, you know, what the hell is this? And then I'm pretty sure Mungo Jerry came out to playing In the Summertime, which is never good when a band... I mean, Mungo Jerry aren't a one-hit wonder. They did have a few more hits. I think
what were those hits?
The next year, because I saw them on the list and I was surprised, Baby Jump was number 1 in 1971
God.
for 2 weeks.
That just sounds bad. I've not heard that song.
No, I've not heard of that either. But they're not a one-hit wonder. They definitely, and the definition of one-hit wonder is kind of very vague anyway. But
Yeah.
if you've had 2 number 1 singles, you are definitely not a one-hit wonder.
You're technically not, but people don't remember
No,
Baby
nobody's
Jump.
heard Baby Jump. There'll be people in the comments now saying, actually, it was really, really big.
Yeah.
And I went to, the Great Yarmouth Disco Club in 1971 and listened to it all night. I don't know. I would have put forward In the Summertime, but there is a song. Before we talk about the artist, can I just say I always absolutely hated this song. Always with a passion. The only time I enjoyed it was I have a feeling, and I might be misremembering this, but I have a feeling Jarvis Cocker performed this on Celebrity Stars in Their Eyes in about 2002.
God.
I might have invented that memory. I'm pretty sure you can Google it. And he dressed out, and he probably regrets that now. But the song is Two Little Boys by Rolf Harris. I don't think our American listeners will know who Rolf Harris is.
Yeah.
British and Australian ones will, because he was super, super famous and successful. He was a children's entertainer.
He was a presenter.
TV presenter. He presented
Painter. He's an artist.
Painter, yeah. He did an official portrait of the Queen, for her, I think, her Golden Jubilee.
Yeah. He should have done one of Prince Andrew.
Should have done one of Prince Andrew, and we'll get to that in a minute. But he was super, super famous. He had a successful singing career. I feel like in the 60s and 70s, if you were a television personality, you released a novelty song or a song at some point. Rolf had a few hits, and this is his most famous. I've seen Rolf live at Glastonbury.
Oh, shit.
And I'm pretty sure he played Two Little Boys. So, and that is the song, is Two Little Boys.
Yeah.
It was probably his most famous hit. It was number 1 for 6 weeks, which is just insane to me.
Yeah. Thankfully, In the Summertime just came along and took that from him.
Yeah. Before I talk about more about Rolf and explain why he's an awful human being, the song is about two boys that grow up together. I don't know if they're brothers or if they're friends. It's one of these story songs which seem to be really big in the 70s.
Lazy songs.
Lazy songs, yeah. And it tells the story of these 2 boys that grow up with each other, and they play on wooden horses together, and then they go off and join the army, and apparently opposing armies. So there's some sort of Brexit divide in the household, and one goes and joins one army and one goes and joins the other army. I have a feeling it might be set during the American Civil War, which means one of them becomes a racist in the intervening years between being a child and being an adult. I don't know. I don't actually care enough, because I don't want to go on his Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
In case it leads to him having some sort of
monetary gain
or resurgence.
Yeah. Oh wait, actually, so it was the Boer War. It was written in 1902. So it's like a music hall song. Yeah. And it's very music hall.
Yeah. So there you go. That was the South African one. I might be being a bit ignorant.
Yeah, it was one of the African ones.
Yeah, still one of them became pretty shitty then, if they're supposed to be on opposing sides. Yeah, and they shoot each other or something.
So there's a conflict.
There's a conflict, and they shoot each other. And anyway, Rolf did a cover of it, and it was a hit.
A big hit.
A big hit for 6 weeks. I also feel not to bash the BBC, I'm pretty sure he was on the BBC at the time.
Yeah.
And a record was big in 1970 because radios played it.
Yeah.
Right? And we only had a handful of radio stations, apart from pirate radios. So if you've got a disc jockey or TV presenter who then releases a single, it's definitely going to get played on the radio,
because they'll just play it on their own show.
Because they'll play it on their own show. So that's maybe led to its success. People seem to like these kind of weird novelty songs.
It's an awful song. It's really bad.
Yeah, and it's terrible, as is The Man.
And it's a creepy song given the context.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, I don't really want to go into the whole Jimmy Savile thing. I feel like we've mentioned paedophilia far too much on this show, which is unfortunate, but it keeps coming up just because so many successful artists keep doing really awful things. But Rolf Harris, after the Jimmy Savile thing came out of him abusing children.
A lot of underage people.
It became that like lots of other entertainers got investigated, and one of them got investigated was Rolf, who initially denied it and was found not guilty.
Yeah.
And then about like 2 months later, a letter turned up where he pretty much that he'd written in the 90s, where he pretty much admitted doing all of this horrible stuff. And lots of other stories came forward of like, yeah, no, he definitely has been doing this stuff for like pretty much his entire career, both in the UK and in Australia, because he was Australian. And he went to prison, rightly so, for sexual offences. And whilst in prison, he tried releasing a calypso song where he complained about, you know, women trying to steal his money and lying about him raping them, despite the fact, Rolf, you've admitted to it.
Yeah.
You know, like, not that, I mean, there can be miscarriages of justice, but you admitted to it in the 90s in a letter. There's no get out. There's no, you know, oh, well, maybe he was tricked into it. And I feel like before it happened, he was very beloved, and I never quite understood why. Like, it was one of those, when Dave Lee Travis got caught to have, you know, sexually abused young girls, I felt like most people were like, yeah, he always seemed like creepy as fuck, and, you know, he was a pretty awful human being. Of course he did that shit. When Rolf got caught, there seemed to be oh no, not Rolf. You know, the nice man that used to present Animal Hospital. And you look back on it and you go, no, the guy was always, like, he was always awful. I remember his other song, "Tie Your Kangaroo Down, Sport." Was that like
awful song?
I don't know if I remember seeing him perform it on like Des and Mel or something, some daytime TV program in the late 90s. But I don't know if that was an older song of his. I don't care enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had a super successful career. He's still alive. He's still knocking about.
He's out of prison.
He's out of prison. Yeah, I know there was controversy. He claimed he was set up, but, you know, he's just a fucking... Those sorts of people just need to fuck off. And by that, I mean, like, he has money. Go and buy yourself a house and, like, just disappear. Gary Glitter, to be fair, got on a boat and just fucked off.
Yeah.
Right? But then couldn't help himself and carried on abusing people. But Rolf was caught, like, going to a school and, like, trying to like entertain the kids during lunchtime, and then he was like, oh no, I was set up, and like the Daily Mail were just like hounding me, and I just happened to walk past the school. But like multiple people in the school were like, he'd come to the school gates and like sing for the kids, and the kids were like, who is this creepy old Australian
His net
man?
worth is $19 million.
Doesn't surprise me.
He has no reason to be in the public sphere anymore. He could disappear, live a very happy rest of his life.
I think he has now. You know, he just needs to die, really. Well, he's old, and you know, okay, he's gone to prison for his crimes, but like a lot of them, they got very short sentences because multiple victims came forward, and they were only able to prove a small handful of them. Arguably, he committed more than enough crimes that he should have gone to prison for the rest of his life. But he didn't, because that's not how the justice system works. You know, you've got to have proof. There is due process, and yeah, he was only given like 2 years or something
in an open prison.
In an open prison, yeah. So, which we're not here to debate the validity of the English and Welsh justice system. At least he went to prison for it. But yeah, the other one he was famous for was what's the thing that Bowie played?
Stylophone.
Yeah, he's a famous stylophone.
He kind of popularised it.
He popularised it, which is a weird claim to fame.
So we wouldn't have had Space Oddity without Rolf Harris.
Without Rolf Harris, yeah. Well, what do you call it? Bowie had one with a big sticker of Rolf Harris on it.
Yeah.
He was given it as a present
by Mark Bolan.
Yeah, and that was, I don't know if that wasn't specifically the one that was played on, but I've seen footage of him performing live, like in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
With there's like a ha ha ha.
Peel that off pretty
peel that
quickly.
fucking Rolf Harris sticker off. So yeah. That was kind of it. I would delete that one from history. That can just go.
There are other bad songs on this list. One that I found particularly offensive was Dana's All Kinds of Everything. It was just like a harpsichord, really like out of style, out of dated, like British Baroque pop.
Yeah.
I think it's called, where it's like harking back to like centuries before. Like, why are you trying to do that?
I think old people have always bought stuff like en masse.
Yeah.
So, like now, there'll be things that'll chart that you'll go like, why is that? Go into your local supermarket.
Yeah.
And look at like the top 20 albums.
Yeah.
Like, not the top 20 like singles on the single chart. is the singles chart is pretty much dominated by people like listening to things on Spotify and YouTube, and that tends to skew quite young or younger. No, go to a supermarket and look at the CD chart.
Yeah.
If your supermarket still has a CD chart, and the top 10 will be filled with like, say, Simply Red have released their 14th album. It will chart in the CD charts at like number 4.
Yeah.
And you go, why? And the reason is because the only people who buy physical media now are old people, and they still buy a significant amount of copies that stuff will still chart.
Yeah.
So you're there going, really? Like, I didn't even know this artist or band was still making music. Or whenever you see a soap star go and do like a Frank Sinatra cover album, and that will be number 1. No, it isn't number 1. It's number 1 in a CD chart in a supermarket, because the only person who buys that kind of music is old people.
It'll be like loads of vocalists you've never heard of doing covers of songs from the 50s.
Yeah, the other one that's really popular is like weird charity albums. Like, not to put down the Military Wives, but they've released multiple albums and they always go straight to number 1. And you're going, okay, I mean, I've said this many a time with charity singles in the first series. I appreciate the gesture of helping charity, but are there people who genuinely went, you know what I need to hear? I need to hear like songs from the 1970s sung by middle-aged women whose husbands were either died or injured in British Army conflicts. That's what I need to listen to. You know, that's what I'm going to wake up and go and buy today at the supermarket and put in a CD player and listen to, or put in my car and drive round and listen to. It's just very bizarre.
Yeah, people buy that kind of stuff to support the charity, but in that case, just donate.
Just donate, yeah.
Because all you're doing is giving money to CD pressing companies.
Yeah. Shall we move on to the third and final part?
Yeah.
Which we kind of already mentioned, because I was hoping this year there would be some like brilliant hidden gem. Like, I listened to the England World Cup squad 1970s track Back Home, hoping that would be like the new Free Lions, but it was shit.
It was shit. It was awful.
So, like, there was nothing really that stood out. The only one that I feel maybe doesn't get the credit that it fully deserves is Freda Payne's Band of Gold.
Yeah.
Which is a song I absolutely love. I think it is quite well known. I remember a little while back, ITV did a programme of like the nation's top 25 number 1 singers of all time, and it was like number 25 or something. Yeah. So I think it is still pretty well remembered, but I don't think it's as well remembered as maybe it should be. Because to me, it's up there with songs like Aretha Franklin's Respect.
Yeah,
you know, these like big kind of like diva anthems. And I mean, it's not really. It's kind of a story song, in a similar vein to Two Little Boys. Because it's about, like, you know, regretting getting married on your wedding night.
Yeah. It's like a young couple, and they're kind of not. They've realised they're not actually like compatible.
Yeah, on their wedding night.
Yeah. You know, Freda Payne she originally refused to sing it, and she was kind of like bullied into it.
Yeah.
She thought it was too like juvenile for her, which is ridiculous. Now looking back, it's probably the song that she will be remembered for.
Well, the last time I remember hearing of her was a couple years ago. Do you remember? So I should probably explain for those. I don't know how famous he is in America.
Yeah.
But David Guest. So David Guest was, for anybody like under 40, I guess you'd know of him as being like a reality TV star. But in the 1970s, I think he was like a publicist for like the Jacksons and various other sort of big Motown guys. And then he had a bit of resurgence in the 2000s because he married Liza Minnelli, got divorced from Liza Minnelli, and then he went and did like I'm a Celebrity and The Jungle and like Celebrity Big Brother and things. And when he was in the Celebrity Big Brother house with Angie Bowie, David Bowie died, and Angie Bowie, who'd spent the previous 40 years slagging off David Bowie, suddenly was very, very upset. And instead of going, David Bowie has died, I've just been informed, she told everybody that David had died, and they took that as David Guest has just died, who was a housemate on Celebrity Big Brother.
Yeah.
And so they're all walking around, and she's going, David has died.
Yeah,
David
and they
has died.
think that there's a dead body.
Yeah, I think there's a fucking dead body in the Celebrity Big Brother house, and it's not. I think, like, he was at the time just, like, he was ill or something. No, I think he was, like, ill, but he was, like, sleeping in a separate room. Was like, and they're like, oh my god, David's dead.
Yeah, proper freaking out.
David Guest, being the brilliant music manager and promoter that he is,
Yeah.
when he came out, he decided to do a tour called David Guest is Not Dead, ... but Alive with Soul.
Yeah.
And he had all these like famous soul singers and artists, one of which was Freda Payne. And in between that tour getting booked and actually happening, David Guest actually died. And because they knew that he would find it funny, they did the David Guest is Not Dead, but Alive with Soul tour, not compared by David Guest, because David Guest was actually dead.
That's so
and I
funny.
feel like that would have been... He would have been happy with that.
Yeah.
Because he was a very knowing man, and he would have found that funny.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's interesting. There's so many famous people that appear on that song as well. There's members of the Supremes. There's Ray Parker Jr. plays guitar on it. Quite
Ghostbusters fame.
Yeah.
No.
And it became a gay anthem because people, they listen to the lyrics, and obviously it's about an uninterested man. He's not really giving his wife attention, and they
projected that must mean
that it was because he's gay.
Yeah, because that must be the case.
Yeah,
So that's 1970, really. I don't know what else to add. Like I said, not many songs to pick from. If you were to go on Wikipedia yourself and look at the list, the ones you've heard of are the ones that are kind of worth listening to.
Yeah, apart from Two Little Boys.
Apart from Two Little Boys, that one can just go. Did I talk about Jimi Hendrix? I think I mentioned Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. Hendrix charted because he died. Sad. It's a good song.
It's a fine... At least it wasn't like some really crappy, like
a demo
Hendrix,
that they rushed out.
Voodoo Child is probably one of his best songs. So, that's not a bad one to have as his own.
I wonder if this... Obviously, he was a member of 27 Club, but I wonder if this started like the trend of people getting number ones after they die.
Yeah, I don't know. I imagine it always went on. I can see, like,
well, Buddy Holly,
yeah. I can see record labels when someone dies young, like...
Quick, everything.
Yeah,
Put it out
I mean, Otis Redding didn't have any success till after he died.
Charted after he died.
Yeah, so I feel like that's kind of a thing record labels have always done. Anything to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
I mean, when Elvis died, it was the best thing that ever happened to Sun Records.
Yeah.
And the same with Death Row Records when Tupac died.
Yeah.
Tupac has released more albums since he died than he did when he was alive. As has Elvis, I think. Like, every couple of years they seem to find some recording that Elvis did.
Yeah, or they go back and they, like, add stuff, like Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah, for no reason. And it'll always chart, and that kind of thing is the thing that's always in the top 5 when you go to Sainsbury's, in the CD chart.
Yeah.
Because people will buy shit. Because you were like, Blue Suede Shoes, you know what it needs? An unnecessary oboe solo in the middle.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I will buy.
Okay.
Anyway, for the final part of the episode...
We're going to pick a random year between 1954 and 2020.
Yeah.
And we've got 1997.
Oh, wow. Well, we've kind of covered... I mean, I'm happy for that to be the year.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with that one.
I know what we're going to like and what we're not going to
like. I'm going to try and not rehash some things we've already said.
Yeah.
So I will say this right now. I will not talk about Elton John
Yeah.
and Candle in the Wind, because we did a whole 2-hour episode basically on that. Go and listen to it. It was the series finale of series 1. But yeah, I'm happy with 97. Join us next week for that.
Yeah, subscribe, like, share, do the usual things. If you're on YouTube, comment down below what your favourite song of 1997 is. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and also we're open to taking any requests of sort of things people would like us to cover. But yeah, thank you.
Bye.